let's see. I wish I could find. All right. Well, anyways, I'll find that later after. But anyways, there's a point where Achilles actually draws his sword to kill the king of the Greeks, and he's intervened by Athena. Athena checks his anger and says, "You need to think about this. You cannot kill him. I will not let you kill him, but you can insult him." And the strings of insults that comes out of that next part, out of Achilles' mouth, is actually very, very poetic. It's great. That's what I was looking for just now. So Athena grants him permission to insult. So what happens throughout the rest of this is Achilles refrains from battle. The Trojans become dominant because now Achilles is not there, and they have their hero Hector, who is raining havoc amongst the Greeks. And there's a few outstanding ideas. There's a few outstanding aspects of Achilles. First of all, he has a goddess mother, which is not so outstanding. A lot of heroes have that, but the goddess mother. But one thing that's very interesting about him is his immortal parent actually played an active role in his life. Most immortal parents don't have anything to do with their kids afterwards. But his mom is constantly coming down and soothing him and appeasing him, and actually argues on his behalf towards Zeus. And she says to Zeus, "Let the Trojans win, and let the Greeks find out how sorely they'll miss Achilles when Achilles is not fighting for them. And then, so my son, who's doomed to die early, may not lose so much face." So Zeus does that. Here's another idea of the gods. God is a very bad, if you come from a Judeo-Christian culture, God is a very, very bad way to call these entities, these immortal entities. So pretty much they tell the Trojans, "Don't worry, you guys are going to win," even though they know the Greeks are going to win. And so the Greeks think they're going to win, the Greeks are going to win, but they tell the Trojans, "You guys are going to win," and they let the Trojans pretty much rain all fury on the Greeks. And then just because they know in their mind they're going to later turn the tide and let the Trojans win, let the Greeks win. It sounds kind of looted the way I just mentioned it, but pretty much it boils down to the gods telling two different things to different people having faith in the gods, knowing that, hey, I'm safe, the gods are on my side, and everyone dies. It's kind of like a kid sticking a stick in an ant hole and just kind of messing with it. So they're not benevolent by any means, these gods. When Achilles turns to wrath, which is the anger he has against Agamemnon, he starts to separate himself from the humans. He starts to actually become inhumane, and his fate is sealed. He says he's not gonna fight anymore. No longer does Kleos and Time appeal to him. He's going to go back and live a long life. And the Greeks are having such a hard time. Their ships are being burned. All their things that they built for protection have fallen. Their ships are being built, and Patroclus says that if you're not going to fight, at least let me wear your armor and scare. And just the sight of me in your armor will scare the Trojans. And he says, okay. When Patroclus dies, then that is when Achilles, in a sense, also dies. His mother weeps over Patroclus' body. His mother the goddess mother, has no connection with Patroclus. She's weeping because Patroclus dying sealed Achilles' fate. At that point in time, Achilles died. He is no longer a living human. It's a very, very big split. After that, Achilles no longer acts like a human. All the attempts to appeal to his human side fail utterly. Because in Greek culture, in Greek warrior culture, if you're begging for mercy, the soldiers begging for mercy will fall on his knees with one hand, hold behind his knees, and with the other hand grab onto his beard. This does two things, and it brings the attention down to the person who's begging for mercy, and it opens the throat, puts them in utter submission. Yeah, it's an act of utter submission. So this happens. Oh, it's a good part. I like that part a lot. This happens while Achilles is on his rage, and I'll show you how Achilles reacts to it.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. All right. Well, I'm just going to move on to a few nice quotes, and yeah, too much stuff. I do want to read a poem to you that was written by, what's his name? Anyways, his name isn't that important. He was a British soldier in World War I, and he was actually fighting in Dardanelles, which is Turkey, and Troy is also Turkey. So, and he was actually just across the Aegean Sea, which is just very close to the plains of Troy, very close to where the Trojans were fighting. And he was on 3 days peace, and he was going back to war that day as he wrote this poem. And this is what he wrote. I saw a man this morning who did not wish to die. I ask and cannot answer, if otherwise wish I. Fair broke the day this morning upon the Dardanelles. The breeze blew soft, and the morn's cheeks were cold as cold seashells. But other shells are waiting across the Aegean Sea, shrapnel and high explosives, shells and hells for me. Oh, hell of ships and cities, hell of men like me. Fatal second Helen, why must I follow thee? Achilles came to Troyland, and I to Chersonese. He turned from wrath to battle, and I from 3 days peace. Was it so hard, Achilles, so very hard to die? Thou knewest, and I know not, so much the happier I. I will go back this morning, from Imbros o'er the sea. Stand in the trench, Achilles, flame-capped, and shout for me. The very last stanza, flame-capped and shout for me, refers to before Patroclus was killed, the person that donned his armor was killed. And like I said, when warriors at that time were killed, they were stripped of their armor and taken. So Achilles lost his armor during this time, and he had decided to go back to battle, but he had no armor. And Athena said, well, don't worry, just stand in the trench that they made to protect the Greek camp, and shout. And that'll be enough to just scare them for today. And tomorrow we'll have new armor for you. So that's what he did. He stand and he shouted with a voice that shook the entire plains. And Athena put fire behind his head. So that last stanza is, I think it's a very, very interesting poem. Fatal second Helen, why must I follow thee? It shows that throughout the Iliad, everyone is thinking, why are we here? I have nothing to do with Helen. The Trojans don't care about Helen. The Trojans don't want to fight for Helen. The Greeks don't want to fight for Helen. I mean, the Greeks do get the possibility of sacking Troy, which is one reason why a lot of them are in there. But there is a tone of the pointlessness of this war, and that's what he's referring to in this poem, I believe. Fatal second Helen, why must I follow thee? Let's just give you a few quotes, and then I'm gonna call quits. So, okay, and this is the last fight between Achilles and Hector. And Hector kneels on his knees, not to beg for mercy, but to only beg Achilles to let his, after he's been killed, to let his parents have the body. Let his parents have the body for proper funerals. That's his only request. And to whom with fierce aspect Achilles thus, knee me no knees, vile hound, nor prate to me of parents, such my hatred that almost I could persuade myself to tear and eat thy mangled flesh. Such wrongs I have to avenge. He lives not who can save thee from the dogs. Not though with ransom 10 and 20-fold he here should stand, and yet should promise more. No, not though Priam's royal self should sue to be allowed to gold to ransom thee. Not even so thy mother shall obtain to lay thee out on the couch and mourn over thee, her offspring. But on all thy limbs shall dogs and carrion vultures make their feast. And then he proceeded to kill Hector. This is an example of his departure from humanity. So that is, that's kind of it. I could have a few more quotes if you guys want to hear a few more quotes from it. Okay. To him, Ilonius, an only son, his mother bore, who now beneath the brow and through the socket of the eye was struck, thrusting the eyeball out, for through the eye and backward through the head the spear was driven. With hands extended down to earth he sank, but Peneleus his weighty sword let fall full on his neck. The severed head and helm together fell, remaining still and fixed in the sturdy spear. Then he, the gory head uplifting to the Trojans vaunting, cried, Go now, ye Trojans, Bid that in the house of brave Elonius his parents raise the voice of wailing for the gallant son, as neither shall the wife of Promachus, the son of Alganor, with glad smile her husband's coming hail. There's that one. Raising their comrade's head stuck to a spike and saying, "Go, let the parents know that they can start mourning for the son now, although they will not have proper burials for his son. His head and body will remain with us." And then let me give you the very, very famous Achilles Agamemnon diss. So what does she say? She says, she comes and he says, "Why have you come here?" And she says, "The time shall come for when insolence through full compensation you'll be compensated. You can diss him, but you cannot kill him. Goddess, I needs must yield to your commands, indignant though I be, for so 'tis best. For who hears the gods, of them his prayers are heard." And this is what he says to, "Thou sot, with eye of dog and heart of deer, who never darest to lead in armed fight the assembled host, nor with a chosen few to man the secret ambush. For thou fearest to look on death. No doubt 'tis easier far, girt with thy troops to plunder of his right, whoever may venture to oppose thy will. A tyrant king, because thou rules over slaves. Were it not so, this insult were thy last. But this I say, and with an oath confirmed by this my royal staff, which never shall more put forth leaf nor spray, since first it left upon the mountainside its parent stem." Okay, that wasn't the actual. That is the insult. There's other translations that are a bit better than that. And
does he say any Yo Mama jokes?
Yo Mama? No. This is the very last one that I'm done. This is the very ending of the Odyssey, after the suitors have already been killed, and Odysseus and his son have only one last thing to do, which is kill the women who slept with the suitors. They're being killed just for having slept with them and being insolent. So here. And Telemachus, that's Odysseus' son, said to the other two, "I shall not let these women die a clean death, for they were insolent to me and my mother, and used to sleep with the suitors." So saying, he made a ship's cable fast to one of the bearing posts that supported the roof of the domed room, and secured it all around the building at a good height, lest any of the women's feet should touch the ground. And as thrushes or doves beat against a net that has been set for them in a thicket, just as they were getting to their nest, and a terrible fate awaits them, even so did the women have to put their heads in nooses one after another, and die most miserably. Their feet moved convulsively for a while, but not for long. That's it. Okay.
Thanks. So now we'd like to open up to questions, and we have about 20 minutes for questions.
Sorry, that was quite long. There's still a lot of stuff I missed.
So who'd like to start?
Is the word Zen, does that derive from Xenia?
Xenophobe, yeah. Xenophobe is coming from Xenia, yeah. Yeah, Zen, yeah. And Xenos is the name of the people who are in this arrangement, the host or the guest. Xenos is also...
Xenos
is the name of the people who are in this arrangement. And Xenia is the arrangement itself. But yeah, our word Zen right now is coming from that, I think.
So that's part of my question, and is that because it was sort of a center of trade, and they needed to have this sort of rule for if there were people coming in that didn't necessarily understand the social norms, that they should still be hospitable and try to get along with each other?
I think it was just at that time there were a lot of, I don't know if it was because of trade or anything, I really don't know. My personal idea on it is just having people not have to fear for their life when they travel is something that would hold a culture together and secure its success better too. So it's a tool. I think I don't know all the particulars about it, and if there's trade or whatnot that are big influences on it.
Right, because Xena is sort of fear from that which is from the outside, or sorry, xenophobia.
Mm-hmm. Xenophobia, you're right. And xenos, this word translates into guest, host, foreigner, stranger, friend. Xenos means all these things in English. So xenophobe could be a fear of foreigners or strangers. Yeah.
What's xenophobe?
So.
Okay, other questions?
Sure.
The whole thing, I'm sure you know, started off with the golden apple being offered to the three goddesses, and then Aphrodite saying, "Okay, well, I'll give you Helen of Troy."
The
That's
judgment
what I
of Paris. The judgment of Paris.
And Paris was there, and he got to either be offered.
Judge-
He had the golden apple, though.
Judgment of Paris was was judging a beauty contest between Aphrodite, Athena, and who was the other one? I forget. Anyways, between these three goddesses, each goddess bribed him. Choose me to be the most beautiful creature, and I will give you this. Athena offered prowess in war. Aphrodite offered the most beautiful woman in the world, and then the other one offered
Money.
power in politics. Yeah. So he chose the most beautiful woman in the world, and then that was married to Menelaus. So he stole Helen from Menelaus.
But the translations that I read, it was that he found this golden apple, and they all wanted the golden apple.
You read that in a translation of the Odyssey and the Iliad? It's not part of the story.
I read it in a Greek mythology.
Okay.
When I studied Greek mythology, that's one of the
Okay.
things I came across, and it started off the Trojan War.
I don't know anything about an apple. The stuff I learned about Greek mythology is the judgment of Paris, where it started off because of. So I mean, there's probably different versions of every story, and there's some versions of not versions, but there's some myths that say that Achilles was only ever vulnerable on the Achilles tendon. That's the only place he was vulnerable. But the rest of him was invulnerable. But that's not how the Iliad looks at Achilles at all. So myth does change from time to time, and when these works came out, it might have been a little bit different. But yeah, there are some inconsistencies inside Greek myth.
Okay, well then my question doesn't work then, because I really wanted to know why they wanted to, why this golden apple comes up over and over and over throughout Greek mythology, and why all the gods are so greedy for it. Always.
I don't know.
Right, but if it's not part of what you're studying.
Okay, other questions?
I forgot to drink
I've got another question. So you're talking about oral tradition, and oral tradition being so important to keep the society together. So what about the current story that we tell ourselves about our place in this quote-unquote or sort of global society? Are we telling ourselves the story to help ourselves, or is the story almost a symptom of the system perpetuating itself?
Chicken and the egg? I don't know. I mean, this is obviously this is open for discussion with everyone, whatever you think, if you have a better answer than me. My personal thought on it, my personal speculation on it is that it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. It's a little bit of a spiral of each one perpetuating itself. But all cultures, I haven't gotten really into this. I'm studying the study of myth itself. All cultures have the same exact kind of themes that are developing in their myth, and the myths actually go through a very similar evolution. So that leads me to believe that myth really is a tool that we don't necessarily consciously make it, but it self-forms to make ourselves functioning better. Just like our atoms self-organized to make an evolutionary being that works. I think these things evolutionarily self-assemble, myth and things.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah?
Have you been to Greece to visit those places?
No, I would love to. No one actually knows where Troy is. It's open for debate. There's like 10 possible sites of where Troy could be, and right now popular belief it's site number 3A, and before it was site 6. But no, I've never been to Greece. I would love to. That's really a goal of mine to be able to see some of these ruins. But no.
I have just one technical question, because you said the Greeks were attacking Troy, so Trojans were not Greek?
Troyans were Turks.
Turks?
Yeah. They were, Homer, like I said, Homer paints them as fearing Greek gods and speaking Greek. We don't know if that's actually true or if it's because he's trying to paint a more humanized version of, he's trying to make us sympathize with the Trojans. But yeah,
Were they separate?
I'm sorry?
Were they separate then?
Yeah, they were not part of the Grecian host. It was actually all the Greeks together, all these Greek city-states were coming together to fight against Troy. So yeah, they weren't Greek. So Troy is in modern day Turkey. And actually there are city-states, Greek city-states, that existed in modern day Troy as well. Greek-speaking, Greek, God-fearing, Greek culture, they consider themselves Greek in modern day Troy. So it's not actually unheard of.
So according to Homer, they weren't speaking Greek.
No, according to Homer, they were speaking Greek. They were speaking Greek according to Homer, yeah.
And
But
according to the history,
he only, well, there's no history really except for Homer's thing and a few other references to it. But he, the reason why we say they spoke Greek is because he actually makes a point to say that some of the allies of the Trojans were barbaric, and in that time, barbarian just means foreigner at that time. The bar is what they heard when they heard the person speaking their barbarian languages. So that's what they call it, barbaric. So he does make a distinguishment between the other ones and the Troy and their allies. So it's assumed that the Trojans, if the other ones don't speak Greek, then the Trojans probably are speaking Greek.
They probably had some trade going on. You would imagine, since they're right there.
Well, in this Xenia thing, there's actually one point in the Iliad in the battle where two soldiers recognize each other by the armor they're wearing and said, "Hey, we're Xenos. Before we entered into Xenia, and you stayed at my house, right?" Said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, listen, there's plenty of Trojans for me to kill. Why don't I just kill some other Trojans? You kill some other Greeks. We don't need to kill each other." So they stopped. They exchanged armor, and they bye, and they went off killing other people. So there was definitely some type of commerce and definitely some exchange of culture.
How long ago was this supposed to take place? 4,000 years ago?
3,000 years ago.
3,000 years ago?
Yeah.
So, just recently I watched a documentary about some digs that are going on in Anatolia in Turkey, about not the same Hittites from the Bible, but they call them the Hittites, different from the Bible. Mm-hmm. But is it possible that because that culture sort of disappeared, but is it possible that Troy may have been a city-state of that culture, of the Hittites?
You're asking the wrong person for that.
Okay.
I really don't know that much about it. But Elizabeth Vandiver is the PhD student that I've been watching lectures from. She is absolutely amazing. She's written a few books. If you just Google, if I were to just do, say Elizabeth Vandiver, Google, the first thing will be her picture. She's very, very well known among scholars. Look up her lectures. I can even give the files to you if you're interested in it. But yeah, she knows everything. So.
And I guess another thing about, you were saying that a lot of the ancient stories were lost. Even after they started writing them down, it was on papyrus, and they were eventually lost. Why do you think they were lost? Not just because they were put on papyrus, but also...
The library was burned.
Library of Alexandria, is that part of it?
Burned.
Yeah, was that? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's possible that there were a lot of the Greek stuff.
In Rome, a lot of stuff was actually burned down. So they wouldn't have had, I mean, all their backup copies would have all been in the same place as well. So they just all lost it all.
And amongst like the Greek tragedies, there have Aeschylus. Aeschylus did like 100 tragedies. We have 4 of them right now. And each one of them, we have like a few percent of each of the Greek tragedies.
And then also they were cleaned and, censored by the church.
And there's a lot of stuff that's not very churchly.
Okay, Alex has a question.
So what's the contribution of these epics to the secret development of the Western culture? I think that was something that you wanted to talk about, but probably skipped it.
There's first, medias res is the way it starts, the way the epics and also all of Greek tragedy starts is it starts in a system called medias res, which just picks up right in the middle of the conflict. It's not a pleasant up and bring you into it. It just drops you right in the middle at any point and just lets you go off with it. That is how the Greek tragedies and the Homeric Epics start, and it's also how all of Shakespearean tragedies start. You notice it's actually the authors that actually refer the more they refer to Greek myth, modern authors refer to Greek myth, the more they actually have in common with the Greek writing. There's a lot of things you read that you, without even knowing it, it's been extremely influenced. But yeah, if Shakespeare, if you think of Hamlet, you think of The Great Gatsby, it just drops you right into the middle of the story, and it goes from there. That's one technique that is part of it.
Does that also relate to, like, the Star Wars is the classic example where you have the hero who has intervention from something semi supernatural and is given a special weapon, etc., etc.
I think divine intervention being a norm in that is a big thing. Yeah. I wanted to talk about. I did want to talk a little bit about the how much influence, what the influence is on modern literature, but there's not a whole lot of time for me to prepare towards the end of it. So I have a few things that I had written on my, but I didn't think I was going to have time to do it. So
You got 5 minutes.
Is there anything, may I expand? Is there anything that you can relate that comes from Homeric Epics and that can be seen later in the development, like the moral behavior or standards or taboos that were imposed in the Western society, like with the religion, Christianity later? You know, is there anything that can come from here that was used during the? Do you know what I mean?
There definitely is. There definitely is, but it's not my field of expertise. But as I'm thinking about it, things are coming to mind kind of vaguely, but I'd have to go back and really pay attention to that. But if you were to look up Elizabeth Vandiver, you could definitely find some more information on that. But yeah, I'm not her. I don't have all the.
Maybe that's too broad.
Yeah.
Any last question? Is there something you'd like to say to wrap it up?
It's probably these two works of literature. There's something about it. I don't understand what it is. For me, I was in kind of not a spiritual trance, but there's something different when I was reading these than there's ever been when I read other things. And sometimes I get it. I get it in the Gatsby. I get it in a few other works. But I got this thing, and it seems like everyone throughout all of history has, not everyone, but many other people have shared that same experience. This guy's poem who I read was extremely influenced by these. And it's just two war stories. Well, just was stories about the war and then the aftermath of war. There's nothing remarkable about it itself, but what I don't really know what it is, but there's something in there that moves not just me, but everyone throughout history has been moved by it. People in Britain, English people, were volunteering to go fight in that battle. By the way, the author of that poem died 3 days later in the trenches. They found the poem on his dead body. There was a movement of English people who were volunteering to fight because it was a romantic idea to fight so close to the plains of Troy. And they were volunteering to go into World War I and fight because of that. So there's something about these epics that brings, it's hard for me to put my finger on it, and I believe it's kind of what Alex's question was about. What kind of correlation or connection can you draw from that to the present time? I think there's just something that strikes a chord with us, because I think a lot of our cultures are very, very heavily based on this, even if we can't see it very, very clearly. And when you read it, you can feel that vibrate, that emanating off of it. And the fact that this is 3,000 years ago, there's a part where he's talking about a dream, and the bard is like just like in a dream where when you're running, and no matter how fast you try to run, you're not making any speed. I'm like, 3,000 years ago, they're having the same dreams that we're having now, you know? There's something that, the fact that it's so old and that, so I think there's, it's an amazing work of literature, but I can't really say why. It's one of the few things I can usually very, very good at saying exactly why I like something. But, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, if this is an epic storytelling
Mhm.
for ancient Greeks, and we know there are epic storytellings in other cultures as well, what is the difference between this epic storytelling and
Bardic is the term I used. Epic just means a very, 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 very long story written in verse rather than prose. So a very long poem is an epic. Bardic, what's the difference between their cultures and just different cultures? The ones are actually were not far from. I think they're. I mean, in the general region of where you're from, Macedonia, that's with the other bardic traditions where they were looking at, and the similarities is just that they are outside of society. They don't really not that Greeks were outside of society, but they're kind of living in the Stone Age in a way, in the technology and whatnot.
So, like, what is, like, for example, contemporary, just the last one, the contemporary, like, more recent Greek folk stories, and compared to the Iliad, are there any similarities? Did they are familiar with any kind of research like that?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know that at all. But let me do one last thing, very last one, okay? That's annoying. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love this, and this is also a reason why I believe Homer was a person who did this, because he has this style of extremely very, very vivid metaphors. And he has his work is just riddled with metaphors. And here's a great one. And this is while Ulysses is sitting in a concert of people. They don't know he's Ulysses, and he's hearing a song that's sung about him. He's hearing his kleos right now, and he's moved to tears by realizing that he has obtained this imperishable glory. All this he told, but Ulysses was overcome as he heard him, and his cheeks were wet with tears. He wept as a woman weeps when she throws herself on the body of her husband who has fallen before his own city and people, fighting bravely in defense of his home and children. She screams aloud and flings her arms about him as he lies gasping for breath and dying. But her enemies beat her from behind, about their back and shoulders, and carry her off into slavery to a life of labor and sorrow. And the beauty fades from her cheeks. Even so piteously did Ulysses weep. Ulysses is Odysseus. That is, first of all, showing how moved he was by what he heard. But that's also showing what they did in Troy. That's what the Greeks did in Troy. That's what happens. That's what is at stake. So it's a very intelligent use of imagery that Homer shows. He's showing how someone weeps, and this is something he's returning from having done these types of things to other people. So that's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you.